think a couple of Sabbaths ago, we studied quite extensively from Ezekiel chapter 28 concerning Lucifer. Now, the title of the message for this morning is What Preceded Pride in Lucifer, which means to say that I'm already making an assumption here that something preceded Lucifer's pride. Now, the common understanding in the Christian world is that the original sin of Lucifer was what? Pride. That's what we have been given to understand, that the original sin, the sin of Lucifer was pride. And we have in depth looked at it a couple of Sabbaths ago, and I have to go back and read this again in the light of the message for this morning, that pride was not Lucifer's original sin. Pride came as a result of the iniquity that was found in Lucifer. It is extremely important that we understand this, because around this revolves the totality even of what we were studying in the Sabbath class this morning, that at the end time we must know very definitively what was this iniquity that was found in Lucifer that ended up, can you imagine, ended up causing him to become very proud. So what was it that caused him to become very proud? So I'm going to start with Ezekiel chapter 28, and I'll read verse 12 first. Son of man, take a lamentation for the king of Tyre. Here the king of Tyre is depicted as a type of Lucifer, of Satan, who becomes Satan. And say to him, thus says the Lord God. Now the king of Tyre was not the seal of perfection, so this does not apply to the literal king of Tyre. This applies to Lucifer himself. You were the seal of perfection, and we have looked at what this perfection was that Lucifer had. That seal of perfection was God's agape love. He was created with God's image and likeness in him. Like Adam and Eve were supposed to be created in the image and likeness of God. And they were created in the image of God. And what was the image of God? God is love. That is the agape love. That is what the image of God is. And it was what? He was full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Of course, we might try and think in terms of externally, but what this is saying, that he was fully and completely, that it even revealed in his total personality, his total being, the beauty of this perfection that he had in him. Then in verse 14, you were the anointed cherub. So he was one of the two cherubs, and we know this only through the sanctuary service on earth, that there were two covering cherub in the throne room of God. One of those cherub was Lucifer himself. The other one was another angel. Because it says you are the anointed cherub who covers. Covers what? You had in the literal sanctuary service, you had the two angels with their wings covering the Ark of the Covenant, on top of which was the mercy seat, and under that was the law of God. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God, which means to say he was exposed to the total glory and character of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of the fiery stone. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created till iniquity was found in you, till iniquity was found in him. Psalm 94:20 tells us, and dear ones, it's extremely important we grasp this, that iniquity that was found in Lucifer, Psalm 94:20 says, shall the throne of iniquity which devises evil by law have any fellowship with God? None. So here, this iniquity that was found in Lucifer, he created a throne room for himself. He created what? A kingship for himself. So that's why it says that the throne of iniquity, which devises evil by law. So his iniquity had in it a law. If we don't grasp this, we can miss the significance of all what is being stated. So there was a law, and that law was the law of sin and death. That was the law of sin and death. That was the iniquity that was found in him. And by the abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. So in this iniquity was what? Violence, full of violence. And I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God. Now, a settled issue is that iniquity was the original sin of Lucifer. He started with this iniquity, then he, in opposition to God's law that governed the universe, which was nothing else but the very essence of God. God is love. So the law of love, God, law of agape love, governed the entire universe. So when he rebelled against God, and when iniquity was found in him, he established for himself an opposition to God. He established a system, a law that was going to be in opposition to God. And that is explained for us in the garden. So sometimes you have to go back and look at what has happened in the garden to be able to understand what transpired in the life of Lucifer. So in the garden, when God told Adam and Eve, or gave the message, the first command to Adam, Adam, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The day you eat of that tree, you shall what? Surely die. So that tree of the knowledge of good and evil was Lucifer's law of iniquity. The throne room that he established for himself, we know, because then he became what? He got the kingship. He became the ruler of this world. He became the prince of this world. And he took over, instead of Adam and Eve having that rulership, Satan took over. How we know? Because in the wilderness, when Lucifer tempted Jesus, what did he say? All the kingdoms of this world I will give you. So there it is that he had the kingdoms of this world. Now, a settled issue, Lucifer's original sin, and I'm repeating this, was not pride but iniquity. And because he could establish this law of his in opposition to God's law, that's where the rebellion started. He then comes up, and we are told by this, what he started in Isaiah 14, in verse 12, it tells us, once he went into this domain and did what he did, how you have fallen from heaven, how he lost the heavenly principle. He lost that agape love. How you have fallen from that agape love principle. O Lucifer, son of the morning star, the day star. So he was called a star. How you are cut down to the ground, which means to say you are no longer have this heavenly principle in you. You have come down and become earthly, no longer heavenly. You who have weakened the nations. So he completely and totally did what? He weakened all of humanity. We were all weakened with his principle from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For you have said in your heart, here we go now. Once iniquity was found in him, his original sin was there, now pride came in. Why did the pride come in? Because he felt that if God has got the law of agape love to govern the universe, this is Lucifer, I have come up with a law that is even better than God's law to govern the universe. And how we know? Because from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, when Adam and Eve ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, all of humanity were, and we've discussed this, were in Adam. We were in Adam. So all of humanity fell for this law of Lucifer. We're all born in this so-called original sin. Not the way some churches explain original sin here once. This original sin was in Adam, and we all inherited this. So what did we inherit? We inherited the law, the belief from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Jesus Christ comes to take us out, to set us free, to deliver us from that sin, the sin. So here he goes. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, which means to say he's going to go above God's principle of agape love. I will exalt my throne above what? The stars of God. He's going to exalt his system, his throne, in opposition to God's throne, in opposition to God's system, above the stars of God. Stars of God in the Bible are referring to the angels. So he's saying, I'm going to be superior to all the angels. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation. I'm going to have that kind of a position on the further side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. Again, if you look at in the Bible, clouds also can refer to angels. I will be like the Most High. Can you imagine? He made this claim that he is going to be like God. So what happened when he ate of the tree? When iniquity was found in him, when he got corrupted with that system in him, when he created that law, the throne of iniquity, said the throne of iniquity which devises evil by law, have fellowship with you, God. This is what ends up. He says, I will be like the Most High. So here he claims to have as much power or even greater power than God does. Yet you shall be brought down to the lowest depths of the pit. So it's a settled issue here. What people have taken, what Isaiah 14 has said, and said, Lucifer's original sin was pride. That is not the case. We have looked at it. His original sin was iniquity that was found in him. Through that iniquity, because he established a system, a throne, a law, and he said it will be as good or even better than God's law of agape love. That was the iniquity that was found in him. Now we're going to look at something extremely important in the light of what Jesus taught. You got Satan's system from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We're going to look at what Jesus taught. Radically different. The pride that Lucifer established is nothing whatsoever to do with God. The kind of so-called pride that God has is radically different to the kind of pride that the devil has. Tragically, most of humanity is locked in with Satan's pride, not God's pride. And we will see what is God's pride. Huge difference. Radically different. And pretty well the whole world and even Christians are caught in this so-called pride, because the most dangerous pride, that's what Lucifer's pride was. It was what? Spiritual pride. So the most dangerous pride that can be in us is spiritual pride, where we start thinking that we are better than what? All other human beings. And just because we might have a message and a truth for this end time, and like I said, we had looked at this in the study of Esther, and that creates any kind of a pride in us, and we think we are the church, that we have established the church, and we've got the message, and we have not understood what we have looked at so far. And the pride that we have is nothing short of demonic. It's not God's pride. And we're going to look at what God's pride is. For that, I want us to look at Matthew chapter 20. And I'm going to start reading from verse 20. And this shows where Satan's pride comes in. And I'm going to start with verse 20 of Matthew 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's son came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him. And he said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Grant that these two sons of mine may sit on your right hand and on the other on the left in your kingdom." But Jesus answered and said, "You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They said to him, "We are able." So he said to them, "You will indeed." They're going to go through this experience, but the experience will be in God's agape love. They'll be delivered from what they're asking here now. The pride that they are asking. "You will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit at my right hand and my left is not mine to give, but it is for those whom it has been prepared by my Father." I'm going to explain this as we're going to continue. What does that mean? And when the 10 heard it, they were greatly displeased with the two brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, here we go. This is Jesus' way. This is God's way of being ahead. This is God's way of having pride, or being proud. Totally different. The demonic way and here God's way. You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them. That kind of a pride is Lucifer's pride. The devil's kind of pride. But look at how Jesus tells us what. And those who are great exercise authority over them. So when we start having authority over people in Satan's method, we have totally missed it. But the true authority comes here. Yet it shall not be so among you. To be my true disciples, you're not going to have this method of having authority and lording over people and thinking that just because you are the head, whatever that headship may involve, and you are lording it over, is not done with agape love, but with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You're on the wrong path. Yet it shall not be so among you. But whoever desires to become great among you, there it goes. Whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant first. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Can you imagine how radically different this is? And you present this to the worldly system and they say, you guys are what? Nuts. They really will. Why? Because the whole worldly system is based on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That kind of a pride, that kind of a headship. but not the mind of a servant. And this oxymoron business of saying that you are a servant leader, nowhere Jesus ever taught that you are a servant leader. Nowhere. That is a very subtle way of saying that you are a leader. No. According to what Jesus said, you're not a leader. You're only what? A servant. Period. Which means to say what? That you're going to only do one thing. Serve. This is Jesus Christ's message for the end time, dear ones. This is the eternal gospel. And there are churches and people that think, oh, we have the Sabbath, so we are God's true church, and have totally and completely missed what agape love is all about. So the whole leadership position, the whole pastoral position, the whole presidential position, whatever they may be, and they control the flock. They control the flock to the extent that you must conform to what we tell you to conform to. Not Jesus Christ, but to our doctrine, to our fundamental belief, whatever it may be. And I thank God, I really do, that in this church, we are not promoting such a thing. Here, and whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. Which means to say you'll have that kind of a love that you will die for what? For any other human being instead of trying to promote yourself. Something very, very important is stated by Jesus in this context in Matthew chapter 23. I'm not going to read the whole context, but I'll just take certain portions and read it to you. In Matthew 23 from verse 6 instead of going from verse 1. This is referring to the leadership, dear ones. Leadership of churches. And I thank God that the leadership of this church, the leadership in this church, have not got that kind of a mind. They all have a mind of a servant. So, worldly churches, so-called people that claim to have the truth for the end time, they love the best places at feasts, the best seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called by men, Rabbi, Rabbi. Very, very important. But you do not be called Rabbi. For one is your teacher, the Christ. That's it. That's it. Only one person. Everything revolves around one person. Only one person. Nobody else but the person of Jesus Christ. And you are all brethren. Can you imagine what that is telling us? We are all what? Brethren. Nobody should be promoting himself as above anybody else. Even if we have to stand up here and preach and teach and do whatever we are doing, if in any way, in our minds, we think that we are better than anybody else, we got a message that is better than anybody else, we have lost it. This is not Jesus Christ's revelation. Do not call anyone on earth your father. What is Jesus saying? Of course we're going to call our father. We're going to call our father daddy. So what is he saying? Do not call anyone on earth your father. Why? The only father that we should have is the person that Jesus Christ revealed. That's the only father. No other father. For one is your father, he who is in heaven. Of course we're going to have fathers. We all have fathers. But Jesus Christ is the only one that should have central state, a position in our life to reveal to us the true Father. And do not be called teachers, for one is your teacher, the Christ. Again, same principle applies. Of course we got teachers. Don't we have teachers? Of course we have teachers. So what is he saying here? Only one person, and one person alone, should be our teacher. The person of Jesus Christ. But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. So you will know a true teacher, a true leader, a true pastor, a true president of a church, or a president of a world churches, or whatever it may be. If in any way there's any kind of a pride there, and they try and control the church, they control the people in the churches, they have completely and totally missed what Jesus is teaching. But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant, and whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. The proof that Jesus is exactly what he taught. The difference between Jesus and Satan's principle, Lucifer's principle, his throne of iniquity, is radically different to what Jesus revealed. And for that, I want us to look at something radical that Jesus did. Radical. I'm not going to read the whole passage. I'm going to just show what happens here. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come, that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. After supper being ended, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hand, and that he had come from God and was going to God, rose from supper, laid aside his garments, took a towel, girded himself. And after he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. Then he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, Lord, you are not washing my feet. Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. He will realize the significance of this after this. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. So what did Jesus do here? He revealed what? What did he reveal? He revealed a true leader. He revealed what a true leader is. The kind of leader that Jesus established. Not the kind of leader that Lucifer established. Not this proudful type of a leadership. This leadership that is totally and completely in agape love and has that kind of humility. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, something very interesting in the context of what we have discussed is stated. And I'm going to read from 1 Corinthians 15 verse 20 onward. But now Christ is risen from the dead and has become the first fruit of those who have fallen asleep. For since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of death. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ all shall be made alive, but each one in his own order. Christ the first fruit, afterwards those who are Christ at his coming. Then comes the end, when he delivers the kingdom to God the Father. So at the end, Jesus Christ what? Delivers the kingdom to God the Father. When he puts an end to all rule, all authority, and all power. For he, Jesus Christ, must reign till he has put all enemies under his feet. The last enemy that will be destroyed is death. That death originated from the principle of Lucifer, his method of governance. Death originated with him. The last enemy that will be destroyed is death. For he has put all things under his feet. All things under Jesus' feet. But when he says all things are put under him, it is evident that he who put all things under him is accepted. God the Father, pardon me, God the Father is accepted in this. God the Father, what? Is not subjected under Jesus. We'll see what happens. Now, verse 28, now all things are made subject to him. Then the Son himself will also be subject to him, who put all things under him, that God may be all and in all. Can you imagine? After Jesus has done everything, the whole universe is in peace and harmony with God's agape love. What happens? The whole principle that we have looked at, leadership, pride, whatever all, here we are clearly told and shown that what happens, that Jesus becomes subject to God the Father. A true servant, a true revealer of God's character, after everything is done with, when the whole universe is going to be in complete and total peace and harmony with God's agape love, Jesus Christ becomes subject to God the Father.